Good morning. It's Michael Gray with rnhealthcoaching.com. Mend yourself, move, educate, nourish, decompress. We're going to talk this morning about mending yourself and the correlation between that and Buddhist philosophy, specifically the life of a monk. It is September 3rd, 2021, and I'm at Bellingrath Gardens. And what I'm going to do is simply walk around to let you see the beauty here as I discuss these concepts. One of the guys that I'm listening to is Venerable Nick, V-E-N-N-I-C-K. He is a Tibetan monk. This is called Mirror Lake. And one of my other Buddhist guys that I follow is Ajahn Brahm, A-J-A-H-N B-R-A-H-M, I believe. But Venerable Nick just posted a video about what it is like in the life or the day of a Buddhist monk. So we're going to kind of talk about that with mending yourself and whether or not the Buddhist monk mends himself. So we're going to go through each one, M-E-N-D. So let's go through move. So movement for the Buddhist monk is, a lot of it is about patterns and about simplicity and repeatability. And what they do is they wake up at the same time every day, very early. And in this process of waking up, they have habits or patterns of hygiene maintenance, of getting dressed, of preparing their environment, organizing their situation, their bed, which is actually on the ground. And so this is the basic movement. Then they're moving themselves when they are out to go and retrieve what's going to be their first meal of the day, their breakfast. And they go out into the community and they are asking for alms, or basically they are not begging, but it is a thing where people are giving them food in their bowl and they are praying over the people. So it is a reciprocal type of a scenario. Also, part of their movement during the day consists of them cleaning, and they clean both the general areas, maybe the temple or the library, which is basically an act of service, and they clean their own environment, which is an act of service to themselves, to have a clean, organized environment. And some of that is like an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure. So if you are routinely organized, if your patterns create this into your own environment, then you're going to be better off than routinely having to deal with chaos. Then also movement could be considered with their meditation process. So part of the meditation process is putting your body in a specific position to be grounded to the earth. And there is not much movement in this, but it is a specific, intentional type of an action with one's body. And then also there is the act of walking meditation. And even simply walking meditation consists of very intentional movements Whereas you take one foot and you put the heel down, the base of the foot down, each of the toes down, and you ground that one foot before the other one repeats, one in front of the other. So there's simplicity and intention on all of these actions, mindfulness of these actions, to just remind yourself that you can be mindful and meditative without having your eyes closed and being still. You can still the mind with the body still moving. So that's it for movement. For education, part of their daily process is to study the teachings of the Buddha, which is called Dharma. And in this process, they are intentionally increasing their competency as well as their practice of these things that they learn. So on a daily basis, they are educating themselves on how to live a more virtuous, wholesome, contentment, joy, peaceful, groundedness, appreciative life, one of kindness, kindfulness. These are some of the precepts, and these are some of the things that they try to accomplish in their life. So even though it appears simple, it is very deep. Even the act of meditation is an act of education. And most people think that meditation is sitting there with your eyes closed, maybe focus on your breathing and not thinking of anything. But that is actually not the case. Meditation consists of having awareness of the thoughts that go across your frontal cortex in front of your mind, and then noting them, like maybe a memory would come up of your childhood or a place that you were, just totally randomly for no reason, and you really can't connect it to anything. You don't necessarily have to go down deep down into the idea of why you thought that specific thought at that specific time and all of this. You just note, almost like a check mark, noted, and then you would go back to trying to clear the mind and focusing on the breathing. And this is the process of learning how to meditate. And then nourishing yourself. The monks basically do something that is similar to intermittent fasting, where they are eating in the morning and noontime, and they are not eating at nighttime. So basically breakfast and lunch. And they do this with intention specifically to nourish the body. And some of my very earliest videos on rnhealthcoaching.com are talking about nourishing yourself, and to ask yourself these questions, this 3 questions basically. 1, anytime your hand goes to your mouth, whether or not it is a drink, a beverage, or some type of food, you answer the question with this action: am I poisoning myself? Am I treating myself? And am I nourishing myself? So what the monk does with intention is tries to only nourish, and the action of nourishing yourself is just so that you can maintain your physiological health. No other reason. So you take in the amount of calories needed to maintain your vessel, right? And then lastly, there is decompression. And the decompression can also be found in the actions as well as in the meditation. The act of sweeping up your environment. There can be decompression involved in the action or actionlessness of anything you do. You can decompress and have groundedness as you mop the floor, the rhythmic motion of the mop on the floor. You can have decompression as you are sitting in a good meditative posture, grounded to the floor, and having intention on where all of the pressures and reducing these pressures and the feeling of neutrality. You're going to be decompressing as you are focusing on your rhythmic breathing. You can also be decompressing as you're doing meditative walking. One Buddhist philosophy teacher, his name was Reginald Ray, on one of the CD series that I heard from him, this was back in 2014, 2015, he was telling stories about, one of the stories was the Buddhist practitioner was talking to somebody else that had a boss, maybe. And so the Westerner was saying that my boss has this amount of money and this amount of cars and this amount of power and influence, and just basically arrogantly talking about all of the things that boss had and all of the power that his boss had and how he was going to be like that one day. And the Buddhist monk said that my teacher eats when he eats. Like, he focuses on what he does when he eats. So the Westerner was like, well, why is that important? Why is that something that should be even cared about? And this was an important lesson to me about intentionality. It's like, how often are we trying to multitask, trying to do multiple things at one time? And I'm certainly guilty of this. I'm driving around, I am listening to YouTube podcasts, and I do it with under the pretense that I am actually educating myself while I'm driving around. So I'm trying to be efficient, I'm trying to educate myself, I'm trying to do as many positive motions, positive actions, positive things as I can. And with his teacher being very present, eating with intention, that this actually is a very difficult skill to achieve. And it is one that has much value, probably more value than the idea of multitasking. Some examples of this is Ajahn Brahm on a Dharma talk that I listened to yesterday was talking about Leo Tolstoy and how he had a teaching in one of his books about the three most important things. The three most important things that he said, and this actually made a big impression on Ajahn Brahm before he became a Tibetan or a Buddhist monk. So when he was still at Cambridge. And those three teachings are, or the three important things are, what is the most important time? The most important time is this moment right now. So that's presence. Who is the most important person? The most important person is not you. The most important person is the person that is in front of you. And maybe if you're not interacting with any other person, then you are the most important person. But if there's an interaction, then you should be present and consider that person as the subject of your attention. And then the most important thing to consider is during your interaction with that person, are you doing the correct thing? Are you serving them? So basically it is presence, it is intention, and it is being of service. So in that way, Leo Tolstoy was utilizing some of the Buddhist philosophy. And the reason that it is the Buddhist philosophy and not Leo Tolstoy's philosophy is because this Buddhist philosophy has been around for 2,500 years, so longer than Christianity. So that's why, it's important, I believe, to learn these things, because we are learning from the oldest philosophy, or in this case that I'm aware of, that I've come across, the oldest teaching, the ones that have been sifted through the filter the most times. And it's also the ones that have connected with me the most. I grew up in a Catholic household. I went to Catholic schools as a youth. I mean, I understand, do not steal, do not commit adultery, do not use the Lord's name in vain, do not kill, obviously these things, but this Tibetan philosophy answers the questions of why do I have chronic discontentment in my life? Why do I have these negative emotions of worry, anxiety, depression, regret, guilt, fear, remorse? Like it answers those questions. And it answers the questions of what are the ways to act? What are the ways to think, to have the most blessed life? So, one is by limiting the amount of dumb shit that you do, So, and then having awareness and observation and acknowledging when you do these suboptimal things, these dumb things, these things that are ignorant. Right? So, like Reginald Ray taught me on his DVD series called Maha Mudra. Basically, he taught me the 3 obstructions and the 4 reminders, and I've mentioned these many times. 3 obstructions to living a peaceful life. 1 is arrogance, 2 is patterns, and 3 is reactivity. So that's could be unhealthy, negative patterns, as well as unhelpful, and negative reactivity. And those are both different, but they are all connected. And then the arrogance of thinking that things are just going to work out without you taking distinct action and awareness. So the Buddhist action of meditation is allowing you to figure out whether or not you're being arrogant or ignorant, to figure out whether or not you are implementing patterns and reactivity that are not helpful to your overall goal of peace and harmony and having a joyful life. And then the 4 reminders are things that you need to think of on a daily basis. The 4 reminders are that suffering is just a normal part of life. There's nothing you can do to avoid suffering. That there is karma, which means that what you do matters. Look at that little thing tried to get me. It tried to get me. That thing looks like it might be dangerous too. I don't even know. I'm gonna leave that fucker alone. So, if you take positive actions, positive patterns, then you are likely to receive positive rewards. And then if you are on the negative side of that coin, then negative shit's probably gonna turn up in your life, and you shouldn't be surprised if that's the case. That there is impermanence. Impermanence is obviously that there is a finite amount of time that we're going to be on this earth in these bodies. And fortunately, I am daily grounded in impermanence because of my life or my job as a hospice nurse. And then preciousness, which is can be seen here, that this human existence, this place that we live, these opportunities that we have, these connections that we have with our families, and then even with the meditation and the connection that we eventually discover with ourself, that those things are precious. And you have to have this on a daily, you have to have these daily reminders. You know, for me with impermanence, I have a countdown app on my phone, and with me living my full anticipated lifespan according to governmental statistics, I'm going to die at around year 2055. So it is today, September 3rd, 2021. And I actually have a reminder right there. That is an hourglass. It's a universal sign for expiration date on the side of packages. And it says 2055. And then I have a countdown app on my phone that has November 15th, 2055 in it. And I have like 12,481 days left. So I asked myself, am I making good use of this day? Because there's no guarantee that I'm going to make it to that 2055 or bust. But if I do, then I want to limit regret minimization, and asking whether or not I have made good use of this precious life that we have. And you can only do that by understanding that you should have distinct intention and attention to the preciousness of this life. Try and seek out things that bring you joy and peace and contentment. If you have a miserable day, it's most likely because you chose to not have an exceptional one. And also, there is suffering, so there is likely going to be no day that is without suffering, and that is totally precious. For instance, for me, at 4 o'clock this afternoon, I'm going to be working till midnight, helping multiple people, multiple families of these patients in ways that I have no idea what to expect. The phone calls come in, the needs are random, they are unscripted, and they are, there's just no way to tell what is going to occur. And you have to be ready and willing and flexible to do the best of your ability, to place yourself in a position of compassion, empathy, as well as competence. So after 20 years of nursing, I feel like I have some exposure to figuring out ways to problem solve some of the things that are needed. But I don't have all the answers. Some of it is utilizing your resources, creative problem solving, hopefully having the amount of flexibility and resources at hand to handle these situations, which we do for the most part, and just doing the best we can to decrease the suffering of others. And even within all of that, within these little micro situations, we can find some joy and some laughter and some way to help decompress the families, the patients, even within the acute crisis or whatever else might be happening. So I think this video is way long, but this Buddhist philosophy, these Buddhist teachings, if you find yourself with chronic anxiety, if you find yourself with chronic depression, chronic worry, then I recommend searching this out. You don't need to watch TV. You don't need to watch people pulling tow trucks across Alaska. You could be learning this stuff and figuring out what it is that's really important in life, and maybe acquiring some tools to help yourself through this journey, which will ultimately help others through this journey, which will decrease suffering and bring joy to the world. So anyway, mend yourself, move, educate, and